let's start with the truth. Racism doesn't stop at the border. When you leave the US, you're not leaving behind how the world sees you. You're just entering a new version of it. The US Department of State makes this clear in its own travel guidance. In multiple country profiles, from France to Brazil, the State Department warns that US citizens of African descent, indigenous descent, and darker skin tones may face additional scrutiny or mistreatment from police, order agents, and private citizens. That means racial or ethnic profiling isn't just an American problem. It's global, and it takes different forms depending on where you go. But you have to admit, it is amazing that a country currently run by a group of people who are systematically eliminating diversity programs and have focused their attention on dismantling civil rights would feel that they're in a position to warn others about the disparaging treatment of people of color in other countries. Well, I guess the old saying, "It takes one to know one," holds true in this instance. So when people talk about leaving, the real question we have to ask is, the rest of the world actually safer, or does it only feel that way? Today, we're going to try and answer that question. We're going to go over some countries where Black Americans can and have actually found that calm, that community, and that sense of freedom that for too long felt out of reach in America. Let's start in Europe, a region that often surprises people. It's not perfect, but in some countries, safety isn't just cultural. It's built into the system itself. If you ask most Black expats where they feel both safe and respected, Sweden almost always comes up. It's not because racism doesn't exist. It's because the system is designed to confront it. Sweden's Discrimination Act of 2008 is one of the most comprehensive equality laws in the world. It covers everything: jobs, housing, education, healthcare, and even everyday interactions with businesses or public services. The law is enforced by the Equality Ombudsman, known locally as Diskrimineringsombudsmannen, or the DO. This agency doesn't just investigate complaints. It holds institutions accountable and can take them to court. That means discrimination here isn't just socially frowned upon, it's legally actionable. For Black Americans used to systemic silence at home, that matters. There's something powerful about knowing if someone crosses a line, the system is on your side. But safety in Sweden goes beyond the legal. It's also built into the culture. Guns are rare, violent crime is low, and community trust is high. Police rarely carry firearms, and encounters are generally calm and professional. Most Black expats describe Sweden not as perfect, but as predictable. People might keep their distance. Swedes are famously private. But it's social reserve, not hostility. Once you integrate into local networks or language circles, relationships are authentic and long-term. And for those wondering if there's a Black community here, yes, there is, and it's growing. Cities like Stockholm, Malmö, and Gothenburg have vibrant African diaspora scenes, from Ethiopian restaurants to Afrobeat events and hair salons that cater to the community. Sweden might not give you the same warm social energy as Ghana or Costa Rica, but what it offers is consistency, fairness, and peace of mind. It's the kind of safety that lets you stop looking over your shoulder and start planning your next step forward. If Sweden shows what happens when fairness is written into law, Switzerland shows what happens when safety is engineered into everyday life. Switzerland feels like the world's grown-up cousin. Everything works, everything's on time, and everything costs a little more than you expect. But what you get in return is stability, the kind that makes you breathe easier just walking down the street. The country bans racial discrimination in its federal constitution and criminalizes hate speech under Article 261 bis of its penal code. That means publicly insulting or discriminating against someone because of their race, origin, or religion is not just wrong, it's illegal. Still, Switzerland's system isn't perfect. It doesn't have one unified anti-discrimination law like Sweden does. Instead, protection for spread across cantons, meaning your experience can depend on where you live. Cities like Zurich, Geneva, and Basel are known for being international and progressive, with visible black expat populations working in finance, diplomacy, and tech. But in smaller cantons, enforcement can be weaker and cultural exposure limited. What balances that is Switzerland's deep culture of neutrality and respect. Even if people don't fully understand your background, you're rarely seen as a threat. For many Black Americans, that absence of tension, that ability to walk, drive, and just exist without scrutiny can feel revolutionary. Switzerland isn't loud in its inclusivity. It's quiet, steady, and safe. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. From Switzerland's quiet precision, we move north to Denmark, where safety feels less like a policy and more like a shared promise. After Germany, another country often praised for safety but rarely talked about in depth is Denmark. It's not flashy, but it's remarkably stable, the kind of place where social trust feels built into the air you breathe. Denmark consistently ranks among the top 3 countries globally for happiness and trust, year after year. That trust extends beyond surveys. It shapes how people live. Police here rarely carry guns. Community policing is the norm, and even in major cities like Copenhagen and Aarhus, violent crime is low. It's not a country where you feel watched. It's a country where you feel accounted for. For Black expats, the first impression is often quiet curiosity rather than hostility. People may glance your way, but it's not the kind of gaze that carries judgment or threat. It's usually just cultural unfamiliarity. Integration can take time. Danes are known for being polite but reserved, so friendship moves slower than in warmer cultures. But once you're in for life. The African diaspora here is growing, too. Communities from Ghana, Somalia, and Ethiopia have built cultural centers, churches, and even Afrobeat clubs in Copenhagen's Nørrebro district. For Black Americans, that means you don't have to start from zero. There are spaces where you can belong, even while you learn the rhythm of Danish life. What makes Denmark stand out isn't just how safe it feels, it's the predictability of that safety. The buses run on time, the systems function. People generally do what they say they'll do. And for someone coming from a country where trust has been eroded by bias or fear, that consistency can feel like a deep breath. If Denmark teaches us how safety grows from trust, Germany shows what happens when a country confronts its past to build a safer future. Germany's story is one of awareness, a country that's not afraid to face its past to build a better present. For Black expats, that history matters. It shapes how safety, identity, and justice play out here today. Germany is home to one of the largest African and Afro-descendant communities in Europe. Over 1 million people of African descent live across the country, especially in Berlin, Hamburg, and Cologne. That visibility means Blackness isn't a novelty here. It's part of the social fabric. You'll find African-owned restaurants, cultural centers, and entire neighborhoods that celebrate diaspora heritage. But what really stands out is how openly Germany confronts racism. After the George Floyd protests in 2020, thousands marched in solidarity across Berlin, Munich, and Frankfurt. Those demonstrations didn't fade into silence. They sparked national dialogue, government hearings, and, in 2021, the creation of the Federal Commission Against Racism and Discrimination. It's one of the few European governments to publicly acknowledge systemic bias and commit to measurable reform. Legally, Germany's General Equal Treatment Act of 2006, AGG, prohibits discrimination based on race, religion, gender, and ethnicity in employment, housing, and access to services. It gives expats, including Black Americans, a clear path to recourse when discrimination happens. And unlike in the US, where reporting racism often leads to debate or denial, here it's recognized as a violation of federal law. Culturally, Germany's approach to safety feels pragmatic, Police carry firearms, but are heavily trained in de-escalation, and most urban areas have high transparency in law enforcement. Black expats often describe Germany as a place where they feel visible but protected, not erased and not exoticized. Still, integration can take work. The culture is direct, and bureaucracy can be slow, but if you're patient and persistent, Germany rewards you with structure, honesty, and respect. From the structure of Northern Europe to the sun-drenched coasts of the South, safety starts to feel different, softer, warmer, but also more complex. Portugal keeps making the list, and for good reason. It's warm, safe, and beautiful. Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve have become magnets for Black expats who come looking for peace, affordability, and belonging. On paper, it delivers. Portugal ranks among Europe's lowest in violent crime. Firearms are tightly regulated, and public safety is high, even in major cities. The police here are generally calm, professional, and rarely armed. It's a country where you can walk at night without fear. Lisbon and Porto have long been home to Afro-Portuguese communities from Cape Verde, Angola, and Mozambique, creating built-in networks that help new arrivals feel at home. You'll find Black-owned cafes, cultural centers, and Afrobeat nights along the Tagus River. But Portugal also has its contradictions. In 2020, a tragedy shook the nation. A beloved Black actor named Bruno Candé was shot and killed in broad daylight by an elderly white man. Witnesses said it was racially motivated. The government insisted it wasn't. Officials went as far as to say racism doesn't exist in Portugal. That denial exposed a deeper truth. Portugal may be physically safe, but socially, the conversation about race is far behind. For many Black expats, that's the tension. You're not in danger, but you're not always seen. Racism here often hides behind politeness, a kind of societal colorblindness that insists equality exists simply because people say it does. Still, life in Portugal can be peaceful and fulfilling if you learn to navigate the culture on its terms. The biggest challenges aren't violence or discrimination, but integration and bureaucracy. Slow paperwork, long queues, and a rhythm that moves at its own pace. It's not hostility, it's inertia. Black expats who thrive here usually do so by building community, joining diaspora groups, connecting with local African communities, and embracing the slower lifestyle rather than fighting it. Because in Portugal, safety doesn't come from denial, it comes from connection. Portugal reminds us that connection is its own kind of safety. But some places take that idea even further, where peace isn't just emotional, it's national policy. If you ask people where peace still feels possible, Costa Rica often tops the list. It's been called the happiest country in the world, and not by accident. Costa Rica abolished its army in 1948, choosing education and healthcare over militarization. That decision shaped its national identity, stability, safety, and a deep respect for life. For Black expats, especially those seeking emotional peace after years of tension in the US, that mindset feels like oxygen. Crime here exists, of course, but it's low compared to the region. Police corruption happens, but remains rare and localized, far from the systemic patterns that define policing in much of Latin America. Most encounters are calm, and the threat of violence is low. It's one of the few countries in the Western Hemisphere where people still hitchhike and smile at strangers. For Black Americans, the connection to Costa Rica runs deep. Along the Caribbean coast, the province of Limón has one of the oldest Afro-descendant communities in Central America. Descendants of Jamaicans who came to build railroads and stayed to build culture. That legacy means representation isn't imported here. It's homegrown. You'll hear reggae beats in the air, see Afro-Latino faces in local businesses, and feel a genuine sense of welcome. Most Black expats describe Costa Rica as safe and relaxed. Racial curiosity here tends to be cultural, not hostile. Locals may ask questions, but rarely out of ignorance. It's more an exchange of respect. And while you might notice the country's slower pace and softer approach to time, what locals call pura vida, or pure life, it's part of what makes people stay. But peace here isn't passive, it's intentional. Costa Ricans have built their safety on values, sustainability, education, equality, not just policing. It's why the country consistently ranks among the top in the world for happiness and longevity. For Black Americans craving safety without isolation, Costa Rica offers something rare, a place where you can exhale, belong, and still be yourself. No code switching required. But even paradise has its shadows. Because no matter how safe a country feels, risk never completely disappears. One of the biggest misconceptions about moving abroad is believing you're leaving all risks behind. Racism doesn't disappear. It just wears a different face. In parts of Europe, anti-immigrant sentiment can spill over into daily life, especially in small towns or during times of political tension. In Asia or Latin America, locals may not be openly hostile, but microaggressions and exoticization can still occur. Being stared at, touched without consent, or constantly asked, "Where are you from?" Legal systems can also feel unfamiliar. In some countries, police accountability is strong. In others, corruption or inefficiency means reporting a crime might not lead anywhere. That's why it's important to understand local justice systems before relocating. What laws exist to protect you and how they're actually enforced. True safety abroad means not only avoiding harm, but knowing your rights when and if harm occurs. And that brings us to the part most people overlook, that safety isn't just about where you live. It's also about what you carry inside. Safety isn't a destination, it's a relationship. No matter where you go, you carry the layers of what life in America taught you about being Black. You carry that alertness in your shoulders, that quick scan of every room, that instinct to shrink or explain yourself before you're misunderstood. Those habits don't vanish at customs. They travel with you, but here's the beauty in that. They don't have to define you anymore. Living abroad doesn't erase who you were. It gives you the space to rewrite who you are without fear at the center. How do you know you've found home? You start to notice the quiet things. Walking home without watching your back, feeling warmth instead of tension when someone greets you, realizing you haven't thought about danger all day. That's when you understand what safety truly is. It's not perfection, it's permission. Permission to rest, to breathe, to exist without defense. Still, you'll face moments of discomfort. You might encounter ignorance, or the occasional stare, or systems that don't fully see you. But now, you'll have tools, research, community, and awareness to respond with confidence instead of fear. Because real safety doesn't come from fences, police, or passports. It comes from understanding yourself within the world you've chosen to live in. If you remember that, if you keep learning, keep connecting, and keep protecting your peace, then wherever you go, you'll never be running away. You'll be walking towards something better. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't, is it safer abroad? It's, what does safety finally feel like when it's yours? If you're seriously thinking about life outside the US, subscribe. We explore what that really looks like every week.